Welcome to Growth Layer, an interview series that pulls back the curtain on what it takes to build in health and family. And today I'm joined by Alexis Contos, an active investor and advisor across women's health, former CMO of NEA, and including across multiple tech companies, and founder of Breadwinners, a multi-channel platform for women to connect, to learn from one another, and to redefine what it means to have both career and family. Alexis, welcome. I'm so excited to dive in.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
But I think it would be interesting to start with, you've had this nonlinear path. You've been at multiple large tech companies. And I think maybe it would be interesting to start with your origin point and kind of how you got here to being a founder for the first time of Breadwinners. And I want to just talk a little bit about the identity shifts that may have evolved along the way.
Happy to take you through that. Well, I started my career in advertising a little over 20 years ago, working on big Fortune 500 brands and working at creative advertising agencies, which is what I love about the foundation of my career and really how I think about all work that I do across any piece of business is really this intersection of creativity and business. How can the creative process really fuel any business challenge or business opportunity? And so I do feel like the early days of my career has still hold true with me, even with what I'm building with Breadwinners. But it's really evolved into advertising, into running marketing for a number of tech companies. And then eventually I got to the place where I had spent 20 years working at corporations and was fortunate enough to get up to the executive levels and CMO at several companies. And I really was late in my career not really late in my career, late in my life of getting married and having kids because of my career in some ways. I got married in my late 30s. I was 39 when I had my first child, or maybe I was 38. I can't remember now, but it was like 38, 40, and 42 when I had my children. And I was living in San Francisco for most of that. And so it felt fairly normal to be older, even though your OBGYN is considering you geriatric, which is a little bit of a bruised ego there. But I did everything later when it came to family. So I went through this experience of becoming a mother well into my career, which I think that's different for everybody. But I went through IVF and having 3 children within the span of 5 years. So within those 5 years, which I am so incredibly grateful for that technology, and the company I was working for paid for the IVF, like all of those benefits that I recognize a lot of people don't have. I was very fortunate to have. And it allowed us to start our family when I was later in life and my husband was later in life. Now that I started to think about, okay, what is the next evolution of my career? I have an 18-year-old stepson and a 5, 3, and 2-year-old. So at one point in our household, we had an 18-month-old and an 18-year-old in the household, which gives you incredible perspective on so many things, but also how fragile time is and how fast time goes by. And I got to the point in my career earlier this year where I just was finding the years were just flying by and my kids were so little. And I just needed to take a minute. Like I needed to take a minute from the travels. I needed to take a minute from demanding jobs. And, it wasn't demanding in a negative way. It fueled me. I loved the people. I worked with founders. I loved everything that I did, but I just needed a minute for myself after 20 plus years. And then Breadwinners actually kind of fell into my lap serendipitously. I had no plans. I left and I said, I'm just going to take a break and figure out what's next. And I'll tell you in a minute about the transition into that from a dinner I hosted during South by Southwest.
So I love the big story arc. And interesting, I didn't know that when you had kids, it was a little later. And I think that's interesting because you built your career and you got it to a certain foundation. And I do wonder, because in your experience and in your view, does that make it easier or harder?
I think it depends on the lens that you look through, right? So if you look through the financial lens, I actually think it helps a lot because you have an established career. Hopefully you're getting paid more and it makes it easier to bring multiple children into the household because hopefully you can financially support them. I think from a day-to-day perspective, look, there was a huge part of me that was so ready for it. I mean, I couldn't wait to have my children, but I was so used, even when I got married, my husband and I actually had a number of lighthearted arguments, I will call it, about the level of independence I had. I was a very independent working woman. I didn't get married until I was 37. And when my husband came into my life and my stepson came into my life, it was a huge shift because I was in my mid to late 30s. And that type of, I guess you could call it like a lifestyle shift, was a lot for me. I had been independent my whole life. And my career and my friends and my family had been my focus. So I think those two things are very different, right? But career-wise, and this is what we talk about on the Breadwinners, no one really prepares you no matter how old you are. There's no playbook for, okay, you're about to embark on motherhood, whether or not you have a career. Like, put that all aside. Same with fatherhood. There's no playbook. So I had spent, a greater part of a decade, maybe more, observing my sisters, observing my friends, and just like watching everyone around me start families, which I feel very grateful for, to be able to learn from everybody else, maybe what to do, what not to do. Oh, did this work? Oh, what's going on over there? But I think when it comes to career and starting a family, I don't think it really matters how old you are. There is a major shift where you have to give yourself grace because you don't become a new person overnight.
Yeah.
And we at the Breadwinners want to help any mom, no matter where you are in your motherhood process, give you more tools and give you more community to be able to say, I'm not doing this alone. I feel seen, I feel heard, and like, thank God these real conversations are being had.
I can identify, because I know that for me, it was a huge identity shift, right? Because now you have these human beings that your heart has just been torn open. There's so much love, and yet they are just dependent on you at a level that no other being has ever been dependent on. So speaking about being independent, and then now you're a mom, and then you've got this being whose whole life is in your hands, and then still juggling the demands of work, and your pull there. I can understand that. And for me, it was a huge identity shift. Maybe this actually leads to the next part in terms of, you mentioned that Breadwinners came about accidentally. I think it would be really interesting to share that story. And I'm very curious. It's like when you left your CMO role, like that's a big change to be able to leave without a plan in place. I know I'm a planner.
I am too.
So it's like, how was that for you to have that space? And do you think it was that space that had Breadwinners accidentally come into birthing? I want to just talk a little bit more about that.
So my friend Kim Chappell and I, during South by Southwest this past year, decided to host a dinner. The intention behind it was to host the anti-South by dinner. Because South by, as you know, Destinee, from living in Austin and being through years and years of South by, it's a bit much. Like, there's a lot happening. People are running around from one event to another. You're like drinking half a drink and then you're like, oh, I got to go to the next event. Oh, I got to go to this event. By design, we wanted to host an intentional, intimate dinner with 30 women. So that's where we started. We were like, I don't know, let's get a bunch of women around the table. And then eventually where we got to was, we are all in this season of building our careers while building families. So we're both creative people, and Kim came up with the term, the Breadwinners dinner. And I was like, that's it. Like, that is exactly what this is. So, we had some incredible women from all different industries. So we had women from CPG and retail. We had women in venture. We had a pediatric nutritionist, a physician, actresses. Like, the thing that I love about this platform is it's industry agnostic, and you can go deep into certain industries of people who relate to you, but that's really what networking is for. And this wasn't a networking dinner. This was a dinner to show up alongside people who see and understand the things that you're going through at this stage in your life more than anybody else. But we also had no expectations for it. Towards the end of the dinner, we asked guests to stand up and introduce themselves and talk about a box that they were trying to break out of as a working mom. And then we asked their give and ask to the group. And it took a little bit longer than expected because there were 30 women. So it took like over an hour. But we created this really raw, vulnerable space where every woman got up and really spoke about the truths of what they were facing as an individual. not necessarily as a mom, not necessarily as a career woman, but who they were in this moment as an individual. And I was just blown away. Like, we weren't expecting this. And what came after the dinner is a number of guests took to social and celebrated the conversation and just shared, some anecdotes from the dinner. And I had complete strangers reaching out to me saying, I feel so seen. This conversation needs to be had on a broader level. I had brands reaching out to me saying, I want to host your next dinner. And I said to my husband, I was like, I think there's something here. Like, this is a white space that is so needed for women. And I was 6 weeks off of leaving my job. I mean, truly, I was like taking a break, hanging with my kids, playing a lot of tennis. And I was like, I think this might be my next thing. And so I sat down and wrote a business plan. And I called Kim and I was like, I think I'm going to build this into a thing. And she's like, I fully support you. Like, go forth and like, let me know what you need, go build it. And so I just spent the last 7 months building brick by brick, really. I mean, you'll understand this because you have a podcast. One day I just went into a studio with a guest and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm just going to start having a conversation and see where it goes. And I'm now 10 episodes into recording and the conversations have been incredible, like truly incredible. We go 90 minutes recording and it's as if 5 minutes have flown by. I mean, the realness is it doesn't feel like an interview and every woman has something to contribute from their own unique experience. And that's all we want to do is create community around this. The tricky part is like, how do you scale this? And how do you scale the community? Because by design, these dinners are only 30 people. We don't ever want them to get too big. I've really struggled and kind of gone back and forth of like, well, maybe we could do like a 60-person thing. And it really starts to fall apart. Like, you have to keep it intimate. And so I'm actually currently in the process now that this is out in the world and I'm getting notes from people saying, I would love to come to your next dinner in such and such city. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I include everybody?
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And I guess on that note, I mean, I've noticed a shift towards folks just really wanting to connect in person, right? I mean, we look at the wellness get-togethers and now I think that the timing is also especially right. It's like we want to share, we want to connect, and we want to do it in person.
Yes, for sure.
So like, what is the thinking or the plan around how you can expand into maybe more cities than you originally planned for? And actually, even though this is early on and you recently launched, has there even been any pivots from your moment in origin to now?
That's a great question. Yes, there has been many. I've had many a nights lying in bed with my husband saying, what the heck am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Like, I don't know what I'm building. And you're a founder, you know this, but I have had plenty of moments where I'm like, this is ridiculous. Why am I building this thing? Where it started was this idea of supporting working moms. Like, that is the core truth of the breadwinners. But what it's evolved into is what this modern definition is of a breadwinner beyond a paycheck. And that we weren't there in the beginning. It was like, oh, you're bringing home the most money. You're bringing home more than your husband. And like, let's normalize the women who are the primary earners in their families. That's where the dinner started. And it has evolved into this much broader conversation around what does the modern family look like today? Because the amount of research, and honestly, it's been research by happenstance because I've just been having conversations with friends and other folks telling them what I'm building. There's kind of 3 things that came out of it. One, the breadwinner definition is completely outdated and it needs to be redesigned. And so we need to redesign what that means. That is actually the ask for the community to redesign that. How do you include stay-at-home moms? How do you include women who are taking, the seasonal shift and taking a step back from their career to be with their family? That's a breadwinner. Yeah. And so it's funny because there's a number of women that I've spoken with during this process and I explain it and they're like, oh, I'm not a breadwinner. And I'm like, yes, you are. Yes, you are. That's the whole point of this, is to redefine what breadwinner means because it's an old, outdated term, whether you're a man or a woman. The second thing that came from it is the power of the collective. And it's really about partnership. And it could be partnership with your husband, or it could be partnership with your community and friends for people that are single parents. But the modern working family is a really important conversation because sure, there might be women who are the primary earners in their family, but they're only as successful as the people that they're surrounding themselves with.
That's right.
So let's have that conversation. What does that look like? What does the future of fatherhood look like that we're living today? And then the third one, which I didn't expect, is what we call the aspiring hopeful breadwinners. It's the women, the Gen Zs, who are totally career driven and hope to be mothers someday. As I've been having these conversations, telling people what I've been building, the women who are not yet mothers are like, wait, can I get in on this community? I want in to learn from all of these women and fathers and just to be a part of this conversation so I can have almost a playbook before I become a mother or before I become a father. And that was a huge aha moment for me of this community is bigger than I thought it was. And this conversation is much bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
And ultimately what we want to do is have a platform to have open dialogue about pretty much anything that has to do with career and family at the same time. And there's a lot of topics that you can talk about. And some of them are contentious. You know, there's an episode that I'm bringing my husband on the podcast in a couple of weeks because there's been this debate internally. He's been watching some of my episodes. Actually, he's been watching all of my episodes because I make him.
That's honest.
I know. I'm like, you're my editor, so you have to give me feedback. But we have some internal debates around fatherhood and motherhood and, you know, the feminist movement and what is that doing for men in society? Like we have all of these really honest conversations in our home. And I said, you know what? We're going to do an episode on this. We're going to sit together and we're going to have an episode where you peel back the curtain and have some honest conversations. That's probably going to include a lot of hot takes that people don't like. But I think that's okay if you do it in a respectful way. And that's really what we want the platform to be. So yes, it's evolved a lot, but I am so wide-eyed at what I want the community to contribute because it should continue to evolve. It's not this singular conversation.
Well, and what I love about this topic is how deep you can go because, you know, when you're mentioning, you know, partnerships and figuring out what that looks like, I know for myself, I'm constantly negotiating. Do I have the right to ask for help? Like, how are we defining my husband's role and my role if we both want to work? And to be honest, I go into calculations like, well, how much money are we each earning? Does that actually split what we're contributing and, you know, addressing household operations? And like, I know I'm not the only one who's thinking this. And how much of a right do I have to demand if one partner is, in theory, making more, right? But, you know, there's the emotional weight. There is day-to-day household operations, even if you have people supporting you. And so I just feel like this conversation can go so deep. Like, how much permission and self-worth and value are we giving ourselves?
That's exactly right. It is. And that's the whole part around beyond the paycheck.
Yeah.
Is that the definition of richness beyond finance is the core of, you know, there's an episode coming out next week with my friend Eileen, who's an incredible artist. And we talk a lot on the podcast about emotional richness. Is like, it's actually not about financial richness. It's about emotional richness. It's about systematic richness. Like, and my goal for this community in 5 to 10 years time is we collectively help with systematic change by normalizing a lot of conversations that are not normalized right now. Hopefully being the next wave of change for the Gen Z who aren't parents yet. Like, I hope for my 18-year-old stepson, we can help be the change for how he and his wife or his partner or whoever can parent in a different way that, you know, I'm not saying we have it real hard. We have so many amazing tools and community things in front of us as parents, but we just want to have all the conversations out loud. I mean, one of the things that I say is kind of removing the overly curated social feeds. Love social media for a lot of reasons, but there's a lot on social media where I'm like, I just don't need that right now. But what we do need is just real conversations where people can be seen.
Yes, 100%. And I find that if you're willing to go into the topics that we often don't want to talk about, the sex life, like how we're thinking about money, that's what creates the shifts, right? It's not just like the talking about it, it's that emotional and that verbal exchange. So I think it's just one of the most valuable things you can bring.
The thing I'm the most excited about with the podcast is this expert series that we're launching as part of the podcast, where we're bringing in pediatric nutritionists, female hormone specialists, a top negotiator, an executive coach, a marriage counselor. I have a woman coming on in a few weeks who owns a prenup company where it's like, let's talk about money, you know?
Wow. That is a hot topic.
It's a hot topic. It makes people very uncomfortable. But what I'm calling it is the breadwinner digital tribe. Is you talk about your physical tribe, all the people you surround yourself with. But what I want this to be is your digital tribe, where you can pop in your headphones for 30 minutes and maybe get some hot tips from a top negotiator on how to go in and negotiate your promotion with your boss, you know?
Yeah.
Because people don't have time for that stuff. Like, who has time to hire an executive coach? Well, if I did a 3-part series with an executive coach, maybe people could take some things away from it that would be helpful for them.
Yes. I love that. Love that.
I'm curious for you, just kind of stepping into this unknown territory of being a founder. And, sure, we can have a business plan, but when you're creating something from scratch and it's innovative, it's hard to really see, well, one, where it's going. I mean, even if the vision is relatively clear. And then I'm just curious in terms of your relationship with the business model and monetizing, because I know for me, that's where my brain goes. It's like, am I going to make money? What if I don't? How's this all going to work?
Destinee, you just tapped into the late nights where I laid in bed saying, what the heck am I doing? Because I had these exact moments, because I built the business plan. I thought about potentially raising a friends and family round. We've decided to bootstrap it for the time being. And I was faced with these moments of like, how am I going to generate revenue off of this?
Right.
At one point, my husband's like, is this a charity project? I'm like, I don't know. Maybe it is a charity project. And what I have come to after months and months of really high highs and really low lows is I am just going to build this thing brick by brick. I am starting right now with brand partnerships, which I have found some incredible brands who believed in me before this had even launched. And, I had a pitch deck. I had some anecdotes from a first dinner, and that was pretty much it. And some of these brands, it was a very humbling experience spending my summer doing partnership pitches to a lot of brands who kindly said no to me. And I'm pitching to marketing departments, right? So like I sat in their seats and they were so nice, but I wanted to be like, I was you. Like, I know it's okay to say no. It was a very weird moment. So I'm starting right now with brand partnerships, the brands that feel aligned, that want to be a part of this conversation. And a number of them came to the LA dinner. That's where I'm starting for right now. And my goal is to build this brick by brick, run a lot of tests to see what sticks and what doesn't. But for right now, I have this visceral reaction to like charging a membership. People are like, oh, you're going to charge a membership for the community? And I'm like, no, like I don't. Maybe someday when I have built this into something big enough where it feels credible to ask for people's money, maybe I will. But right now, it just doesn't sit right with me to ask community members to pay me for something that I'm in the process of building. So going back to your question about the dinners and doing more dinners around the country, we have 4 dinners lined up for next year. I have brand sponsors who have come and said, I want to co-host these dinners with you. And that, to your point around the IRL, it is so needed. It's the AI antidote right now. And maybe it's in culmination with coming off of COVID and we're 5 years past COVID, but people are craving it. And, as I said earlier, I'm not hosting networking events. I'm hosting something far deeper. Yeah. We had Eve Rodsky at our LA dinner, and she led an incredible exercise around values and finding your unicorn space. And then we had an astrologer follow up and then do a tarot card reading for guests. And it just it really took the conversation around the table to the next level. And so that content and curation piece is really, really, really important to make sure that you're creating a very safe space for women to be vulnerable and then to walk away feeling like it was worth their time.
Yes. Love it. And when you mentioned astrologer, that's very much speaking my language. I have regular sessions. I am into it, all of it.
I have to tell you. So this whole build brick by brick came from the card. So she put one card under every person's plate.
Yes.
And the card that I pulled, I have it in the other room. I'm totally blanking on what it was, but it was like a picture of a little boy building Legos. And the whole sentiment around it was, you are working on something creative. You are working on a project, and continue to build brick by brick. Do not think about the long-term future. And I sort of get into astrology, but I'm not like this big astrology person. And I had to take a minute to be like, this is speaking to me. I just need to continue to build brick by brick. I need to not worry about how I'm going to monetize this. I don't know. Maybe it'll just fall in my lap at some point.
That is a goosebump moment. And when those readings are on, I mean, it is,
it's really cool.
That's right.
Tell us, I guess, especially with our audience, there are a lot of founders, definitely breadwinners. And then we also have a lot of women's health founders in our community and audience. So are you still actively investing? Tell us a little bit more about that side of things, if you're investing in women's health, what you're seeing there, if so, because you are multifaceted and you're doing many things at once.
Yes, it is true. I am doing all sorts of things. We call it the multi-hyphenate. It's the multi-hyphenate woman of today. By the way, that's so many people. Everyone's dabbling in all sorts of stuff. I am very involved in the investing community. It is, I've been angel investing for 8 years or so now.
Okay.
And I've invested in a number of women's health companies, one of them being Poppy Seed Health. Simone Tate is building an incredible platform for supporting women throughout their entire matrescence journey, really. And so I've focused on the postpartum process. I've focused on kind of infant feeding. So there's another company called Helena that has evolved from, they were originally trying to replicate, she has the technology that can replicate the protein in breast milk. She has evolved where she's not just doing it for infants, she's actually taking the technology and integrating it into many other products, which I just find fascinating. And then there's a number of women that are just doing incredible stuff around family tech and just family infrastructure. And that's actually where I'm the most passionate right now.
Yeah.
Family infrastructure for kids, for families. There's so many cool companies out there that through this Breadwinners process, I have been fortunate to meet these founders who are building companies like Sage House. Kelly Hubble is building the infrastructure for your home so you can be successful in other parts of your life. She's bringing in house managers. So she has a process that will help you find the right house manager to take the mental and physical load off of your plate so you can excel in your work and in your life and all the other things that you want to do. I have a very dear friend here in Austin who is building a hospitality group for families, which is just incredible. Literal chef's kiss, because she is starting with a family-focused restaurant here in Austin. And I am just so deeply passionate about it. And she's a pediatric nutritionist, so she's the perfect person to be doing it. But the family infrastructure piece is big. And then even if I'm not investing, I advise quite a bit with a number of founders. There's a founder, Rebecca, who has a company called Pre-Love You, which is building a marketplace for children's pre-loved clothes to be sold on the market for using a very different model that uses credits to be able to buy clothes. But really the mission behind it is childhood confidence and independence for your kids to be able to shop for their own clothes, which is it is such a beautiful moment when you actually allow your 5-year-old to go buy their own clothes and have this independence of choosing what they want to wear. But you would never let them do it on jcrew.com. You'd be like, no, you don't need that $45 shirt. No, thank you. But it's a credit system. So it's actually a really great way to teach confidence and independence for kids.
I love that. We had moved our son, our third grader, to Alpha.
Yes. Great school.
Yes. And they have their own currency. And what I love there is that because they're earning their own currency, if you decide to have your own business, each of the kids there have currency to spend. So no one
Yes.
needs to ask their parents, can I buy this or buy that? My son is co-owner of a popcorn business there, and he can sell to the students, and it's so fantastic. So when you say that, the kid can make their own choices around their clothes and do it in a responsible way, that's so fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
amazing. I do think it's really important to teach children, the importance of capitalism, but earning it and being responsible for it and running your business or running your own bank account at a very early age. Like they should know all of those things, and the importance of the value of that versus, oh, I'm just going to willy-nilly buy things and not understand what any of it means. Like, what is the value behind it?
Exactly. When did you know or start to have a passion around family tech? Was it after you became a mom, or a mom to a second kid, third kid? I'm curious, like, when that started for you.
It definitely started when I became a mom, just because it just opened up a whole new world that until you experience it, you can read all the books, you can watch all the people around you start families, but until you experience it for yourself, that's when you evolve as a woman, right? Like the evolution of who you are as a woman just continues on throughout your whole life. But that was a big evolution for me. And it was 2020, so it was the pandemic. And I think in some ways it allowed me to create some connection. I mean, I did some angel investing a little bit before that, but it allowed me to have connection with other founders who were building incredible things. Now, the way I think about investing is, sure, capital's important, but like capital's really the table stakes. I think about it as, what value can I bring to the founders?
Yeah.
And having close relationships with them, seeing them along their journeys, being, the speed dial where they can call me and ask me any types of marketing questions. I mean, that's the part that I love about working in venture. I was a CMO for 2 venture capital firms over the last decade. And I feel very fortunate to have helped a number of founders from pre-seed all the way to late stage growth companies go through many different challenges and then figure out how marketing can help solve for some of those challenges. Yeah. So that's what I love to do in my investing world with my own capital, is like, it's actually about the social capital and the networking capital. It's less so about the financial capital.
Right. I guess maybe switching gears a bit, especially we're talking about children and, learning capitalism early on. Would you say that there were childhood influences that may have led or fed into your ambition, right, to build the kind of career that you have? And then now also wanting to fuel and inspire other women. It's like, do you see a thread between childhood connection or influences, positive or maybe harder?
I grew up in a household that was, my father ran a family-owned business that my grandfather started. It was a manufacturing business, but he started it in his garage with a friend of his. And when my father was old enough, he took over the business from my grandfather. And that's all I knew. All I knew was seeing my father run the business 7 days a week. Yeah. Saturday mornings, my dad would get up. It was manufacturing. So they had, the whole warehouse floor. At one point, it was running 24/7 because this was like the 90s when manufacturing boom was happening here in the US. I saw him as a small business owner and an entrepreneur my entire life, all the way through to when I was in college. And we saw all the ups and downs. I mean, the high highs and the low lows. Manufacturing was really hard in the late 90s and the early 2000s when everything got shipped over to China. And it was very, very difficult to watch my family go through that. But it is the foundation of how I've thought about entrepreneurship, is watching how my dad has built this business and my mom alongside him. They did it together. Let's go back to that definition of breadwinner, right? Yes. Like, did my mom have a full-time job? No. But was she a breadwinner? Yes. She raised 3 kids under the age of 4 and took care of everything. And like, that's a breadwinner. And that was 40 some odd years ago. And like, that conversation still holds true today.
I believe that definition is so important to be out in the world, because it's so easy to be black and white. And it's hard to see the invisible forces at play when you can't quite measure or quantify it the same way, but it's equally valuable and just as needed.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Of course, we're going to share because I want every woman that I know to learn about the Breadwinners podcast. And I guess in just the final notes, like any last words or shares that you want to speak about?
I have finally just come to the realization through building Breadwinners is that you really can build something and it can be fun. I love my career. I loved marketing. I loved all the companies I worked for. Some of my best friends have been my colleagues. But the last 7 months has been so fun building this thing. I mean, I just work on it all the time. I put my kids to bed and I come back and I keep working on it. And it's just, I have never had this type of energy and enthusiasm. And I guess the point of that is the advice is continue to search for the thing that you find that is fun. And that can be a corporate job, that can be a side hustle, that can be a TikTok influencer, like whatever that thing is, never give up on chasing where you can find your fun and your energy because it's out there. And sometimes it takes 20 plus years to find it and lots of journeys, but it's out there and don't give up on it.
And I love that you just shared and gave permission for having this nonlinear and patient path, because I feel like sometimes we all think we need to find the fun and the calling and the life's work like right away.
And if you do at an early age, like you're so lucky to have found it in your 20s. Like think about the founders in their 20s who just like found their thing. Like that's amazing. It is out there for everybody. Like maybe even for the stay-at-home moms who are the breadwinners at home and supporting their families, they will also and can also find their thing. It just might look different or it might be at a different season in their life, but it's out there for you.
And it's funny that you bring that up because I was just having a conversation with a mom who is now an empty nester, and she's re-examining and looking at, well, do I want to build something now? And that's a really ripe age, you know, if you want to go for it, because now you have all the space that's opened up and it can be an evolution of your next career path. We just don't always think about that timing as first optimal timing that comes to mind.
That's right. I think the stat is Vera Wang sold her first dress at 40 years old.
That's right.
People have had entire careers starting in their 40s and moving on. It can just be the beginning.
I love that. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Oh, thanks for being such a wonderful host. And I loved being here.